Got your Bibles going and turn over to 1Kings, chapter 17. We'll be there for the remainder of this morning. We'll be from chapter 17, verses 1 through 7. This title is When the Brook Dries Up. Now, we all have these moments in our life. We studied about it in our Sunday school lesson this morning. How sometimes we are discouraged. How we're often hard-pressed. How we suffer and how we wonder why or how. But this morning, there's going to be a continuance from last week's lesson. Last week we learned about the people of Israel and being under King Ahab and how he had married Jezebel, the wicked woman that everyone knows about, Jezebel. How we kind of talked about nobody ever names their kids Jezebel. Why? Because it's such an evil name. It's acquainted and it's associated with evil. Just like I don't know anybody that's named Ahab other than Ahab in the Scriptures. It's a wicked name. So we don't name our children. Last week we discovered how Ahab done more than all the kings of Israel combined to provoke God to anger. Then all of a sudden here comes onto the scene a man from, we're not given much of an account of his background. He just comes in onto the scene here in 1Kings chapter 17. We're not told a whole lot about him. Elijah the Tishbite, who becomes one of the most profound prophets of the Old Testament that we're given an account of. You know, I've never served in the military. I have the utmost respect for men and women who step out and are willing and volunteer their service for the military. I've never been able to serve in the military. I wanted to, but I was unable to. I've never had that honor to be able to do so. But I'm sure for those who have had time in the service and served in the military can recall the time that they went through boot camp. They went through basic training or boot camp. This is often a time that you do not forget. It's one of the most tedious and physically demanding times in the service. For many, it will be their first time away from home. Away from the comforts of their own home, away from the comforts of their own bed, away from the comforts of their family. They're completely isolated. It's the first time away from the luxuries of this life. It's a time of brutal discipline, unending work, hardship, regimented training, cold, fear, loneliness. Yet it is where boot camp, or during boot camp, the soldiers are born. It's during that time. A soldier could never be able to serve in the battlefield unless he's first gone through the rigorous training of boot camp. He would never be authorized to do so. In boot camp, soldiers have their self-will stripped away. Trusting, learning not to fall into acts of rebellion that might be in their heart. They learn to follow the orders of their superior officers without question at all. They're told to do something, they do it without questioning. They learn to follow their leader, even to death if necessary. That's where all this takes place in boot camp. And of course, the positive side to all that training that the soldiers undergo in this difficult time. During all of that the soldier grows disciplined. He grows more mature. He is transformed from a common man into a battle-ready soldier. And it all takes place in boot camp. You might say that boot camp is much like an enrolling into a compressed university program. What it may very well be. The soldier learns much of his short time there. However, what he does learn in boot camp is essential for his survival on the battlefield. And the same thing is said for us in our Christian walk. And we're going to learn about that in the message this morning with Elijah. God has a place that each of His children pass through, or we must pass through. He has a university, an eccentric training program for each and every one of us as His children. He does. And He intends to use us as His instruments here. Elijah is about to enroll in this university, as we're about to see here in the verses before us considering this morning the message. When we think of Elijah, we usually characterize Elijah by two events that stick out more than any of the others. When you think of Elijah, for most people, they think of two events that happened with Elijah above all the rest. One, that he was taken up into heaven in a chariot of fire. The other is the standoff on Mount Carmel, where he stood against all the prophets of Baal. These are the two key events that take place later on in Elijah's ministry. However, before we can get to that point, we need to be reminded that sometimes we have to go through a training program. The focus I'm going to get on here is that the truth that before God can use us as His servants, He must train them. We have to go through training. We have to learn things that was never conveyed to us before we can become Christians. And the same thing is said for us in our daily walk. He allows us to go through the valleys because sometimes we need to be reminded, hey, I need to place my trust in God. When I turn my back on Him, I can't do it. But when it's in God's hands, it can be done. It's possible. It's all possible. Before He can greatly use us before men, He must first break us before Himself. And I'm not saying this in a harsh tone or in a way that will be condescending. But what I am saying is this. Before He can use us, we must yield to His will. We have to yield to Him. And that's what God's going to do with Elijah right here. Okay? It's much like a bone or a splice that you place. If you break a bone, usually, and you have to go and you have to get it repaired, they mend the bone back together, they put you in a cast or a splint, then the bone heals back. And usually where the bone is broken, if it was that same bone like it was in your arm, if you used to break your arm right here, and if it come happen after it healed back and you broke your arm again, it wouldn't break in that place. It'd break in a different place because that place has become stronger. Much like a piece of metal that you've cut and you weld it back together. You take it, and if the weld is good and strong and it's put under stress and test, it won't break in the weld. It will break somewhere else because the weld is stronger than what it was before. That's the same way it will be with us in our Christian walk. It is without a doubt that if you are a true disciple of Christ, that you have come to the point that you want God to use you in His kingdom. Is that not our goal? To draw close to God and say, hey, God, how can you use me in your kingdom? Allow me to see how you're going to use me, and allow me to be able to submit and use me in your will and trust in you, knowing that you know what's best. That's without a doubt what every Christian wants. There are lessons we must learn, however. There are courses we must take before God can place us in the battlefield as a soldier of the cross. He must first put us in boot camp. You wouldn't take a new Christian right out of the baptistry and say, hey, I want you to preach a sermon next Sunday. You wouldn't do that. Why? Because they have to go through training. Not so much training of a college course, but they have to grow, they have to mature. You wouldn't throw a T-bone steak in front of a newborn baby and say, there you go, there's your food. No. You ease them into it. You start them off on the milk. And then you start easing them into the more solid food, like the baby food. Then you have to eat baby food when you go into a store and you see the baby food aisle. They have different stages of baby food because one is more thick and more consistent than what the other is. So you ease them into it. It's the same way with our Christian walk. We try to look for ways for God to use us. Now this isn't the truth that we enjoy talking about. It's how we have to go through boot camp. It's not a place that we enjoy in most cases. It's not a place that we enjoy talking about, but it stands to reason that before God can truly use us, He must remove us from all that hinders us. Or removes all that hinders us from within us, so we can start trusting in His will. That's what has to happen. We can often refer to this, and Scripture refer to it, as being refined by fire. Now I shared a post on our church page, a little illustration a while back. And if you didn't get it, here's what the illustration was. It says, there was once a group of women studying the book of Malachi in the Old Testament. As they were studying the chapter 3, they came across verse 3, which says, He will sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. This puzzled the women. They were confused about this. They wondered, what is the statement meant by the character of God's nature? One of the women offered to find out about the process of refining silver, what refining silver truly entailed, what all the steps took place, what had to happen to refine silver and then she would get back to the Bible study the next meeting. That week, the woman called up a silversmith. She had made an appointment to go visit with him and watch him at work. She didn't mention anything about the reason for her interest or her being there. She didn't bring or recall that to mind about why she was curious about the process of refining silver. As she watched the silversmith, he had a piece of silver over the fire and he let it heat up. And he explained that refining silver, and one needed to hold the silver in the middle of the fire where the flames were the hottest, whereas the most heat was not where to concentrate on that silver, where they were the hottest, to remove all the impurities. The woman thought about God holding us in a hot spot. Then she thought about again the verse that he sits as a refiner, a purifier of silver. She asked the silversmith if it was true that he had to sit there in front of the fire the whole time that the silver was being refined. The man said yes, the whole time. And he explained that he not only had to sit there holding the silver and watching it, but he had to keep his eyes on the silver at all times, the entire time that it was in the fire, and if the silver was left even for 1 millisecond too long in the flames, it would become damaged. The woman was silent for a moment. Then she asked the silversmith, "How do you know when the silver is truly and fully refined?" He simply answered and smiled, "Oh, that's easy. When I can see my image in it." His goal was to remove all the impurities. It's God's goal for us. He doesn't want any impurities that's in our lives to hinder us from Him. He wants to remove all these impurities that we have in our lives so we can fully devote and dedicate our life to Him. Now let's join Elijah this morning here in our message. Okay, what's happening, what has already taken as he rolls on the dry brook university, so to speak. As he's in the moments of the dry brook, when the brook dries up, his experience contains several elements of truth here that we're about to hit on this morning that will help us today. These things and events that have taken place we learn about will help us when we're facing the moments when the brook goes dry. So number one, when the brook goes dry, it's this: it's a place that God ordained. It's a place God ordains. Okay? 1Kings chapter 17, verses 2 through 4 tells us, "Then the word of the Lord came to him, saying, Get away from here and turn eastward, and hide by the brook of Cherith, which flows into the Jordan. And when it will be that you shall drink from the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed you there." Okay, just before this, we pick up from last week's lesson. Elijah had already stood before King Ahab, as we covered this morning, and already said, "Hey, there's a drought coming. God sees what's going on with the people here and sees your wickedness. So there's going to be a drought. There's not going to be any rain until God says, or until I say, until God gives word that it's going to rain. So there's a drought coming. So we know what follows the drought. When a drought hits, usually the whole crops in the land dries up. There's no crops. The animals begin to die because they can't feed the animals. So there's a famine. So one thing follows another. It's like a domino effect when a drought comes. He delivered the message to King Ahab that God was about to send judgment upon the people of Israel. He's about to send some judgment. Now, the next command that God gives Elijah is to hide. Now, here's where we begin to think. He wants me to hide. He just wanted to go and deliver his big, bold message to King Ahab. Stand right in front of the king, go right in front of him and right before him with boldness. Now he's telling me to go and hide. Absolutely. Absolutely. Why is he telling me to go and hide? That's pretty odd, man. Especially after he delivered that bold message, telling what was going to take place and the horrific acts that would follow because of the sin that the Lord had seen. And it seems here to me that God would want to keep Elijah, by my own understanding. He would want to keep him right there in the face of King Ahab the whole time. But remember, his thoughts are not our thoughts, nor are his ways our ways. You see, God has a plan. He wants to transform Elijah, if you will. He wants to take him from being Elijah the Tishbite to Elijah the man of God. 1Kings 17:24. To accomplish this, God is going to have to send Elijah to school. He's sending him to boot camp here. And in verses 2 and 3, we find that God sends Elijah to a place called Cherith. Cherith. The word in and of itself means to cut down. It means to cut down, or cut down to size. Remember that? I've heard that a lot when I was growing up. Boy, I'm going to cut you down to size. You don't straighten up. That's what it means. It means to cut down. God has taken Elijah and to cut him off from public view. So a very fitting image of events are about to take place here. Okay? God has cut Elijah off from public view that he might cut him down to size, so to speak. One of the hardest lessons that a child of God will ever learn is that God must send you to Cherith, or cut you down before he can use you for his glory. He must take you and hide you away, cut you down, so that his image may be more clearly revealed in you, as we just learned about the silversmith and the silver. Just as the silversmith heats the silver and skims the dross across the top so he can see his image in the silver, so God wants to work in our lives and bring us to a place where his image is clearly seen within us. We see in Ezekiel the account of the silversmith verse in the Bible where it tells us this. In Ezekiel 22, 20 through 22. And it tells us, as men gather silver and bronze, iron, lead, and tin in the midst of a furnace to blow fire on it to melt it, so it can gather, so I will gather you in my anger and my fury, and I will leave you there and melt you. Yes, I will gather you and blow on you with the fire of my wrath, and you shall be melted in its midst, as silver is melted in the midst of a furnace. So shall you be melted in the midst. So then you shall know that I, the Lord, have poured out my fury on you. The nature of that place is it is a very hidden place. Note the command from God. Hide thyself in verse 3. Hide thyself. Cherith by nature is a very hard and it is a lonely and it is a very desolate place. It's a place of loneliness. Here Elijah will be removed from the spotlight. He's taken out of the picture of things, out of the frame, removed after he delivered his big message to King Ahab. He's taken out of this spotlight, and here he will be left alone while the Lord worked out his will in that prophet's life. Now he's not left here totally by himself, because we know that God's with him. But he's removed from the spotlight of other people. Okay? All the lessons we can learn from these verses. One of the most powerful is this, and we must never overlook it, is the power of the hidden life. That's where you go into your closet. You offer up your prayers. The power of the hidden life, where you take your requests to God, not boasting before men. The power of the hidden life, where you worship. You take yourself out of the hustle and bustle, where all the noise and confusion and all that, and you spend time alone with God. It is a powerful place. It is a very powerful place. And it was here that Elijah had learned to trust God totally. It's here that God revealed to Elijah what was going to take place. It was here that Elijah was forced to lean on God in the moments of hardship and trial. You see, before we can ever give out, we must first take in. Before God can pour anything out of our vessels, we must first put something into them. There is something we all need to learn, is the value of the hidden life. You see, there's a part of us that the world sees. There's a part that everybody around sees. And then there's a part of us they do not see. It is the part that men does not see during our lives that defines who we are. Because you can come in here and be, I'm a good Christian, I'm a good follower of Christ. I'm obedient. Hey, I'm here on Sunday mornings. What everybody here sees may not necessarily be what God sees. There's a part that man does not see that defines us, and it's time spent alone in the presence of God that will truly make us great, where He can use us for His glory. How much time are you devoting in your hidden life to God is my question. How much time are you taking away from your normal daily activities, away from the computer, away from your phone, and your normal daily activities to truly spend time with God? How much time? How much time are you devoting your life with God? We all see those moments when we think God should use us more than what He does. But my question is this: how much time are you allowing Him to use you? However, when He hides us away in Cherith, away from the eye of the world, His plan is for us to grow in private, so we may display us for His glory in His time. Here's the key of life, the solitude. Before the Lord, it is a life that will one day be used for His glory. God will allow us to come to a place where we can be found faithful in the hidden life in Him, where we can grow in faith in Him. When we are found faithful here, He will take us and He will expand our ability to be used. He expands our sphere of influence upon others and brings us out of this hiding place. Luke 16:10 says, "He who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much. He who is unjust in what is least is also unjust in as much." To put it in simple terms, this is the very nature of Cherith, the place of Cherith. It may mean being passed over. It may mean that you are completely left out. But never forget that God knows where you are. His eyes on you. He sees you. He knows exactly the place that you're in. The moment that you're at where you're struggling the most, He's aware of it. He sees it. He knows it. He knows it. If He has sent you to Cherith, He's hidden you away so that He might reveal His purpose for you in your life. Maybe to reveal His glory to someone else, but it'll be done in His time, not ours. In verse 4, we find that the necessity of this place. Notice the use of the word there in verse 4. In verse 4:17, it says there. Cherith was a very specific place. It was a place that God ordained. It was the only place Elijah could be and be right with God. If he had gone anywhere else, he would have starved to death. Because why? We see how God had already commanded the ravens to take and feed him there. The brook would provide his drink, provide his water. If he'd went any other place than that, he would have died. But he was obedient. And God provided. He ordered the food to be delivered to Cherith. It was the only place Elijah could eat. God will provide for us in the moments of our Cherith. When we're there in Cherith, He provides for us. He will not put you in a place where you'll be totally alone. He's with you. He will not allow you to go to a place in total solitude, completely by yourself. He's with you. We have to trust that He knows what's best. We have to trust that He's doing what's right and the best means for us in our life. Placing our trust in Him during these moments in our life, we can grow in Christian and grow closer to Him during these moments because we trust Him more. When things are totally out of your control, don't you learn to trust more on someone else? Yeah. That's what God wants to do. That's why He allows us to go to Cherith. When the Lord sends us to a difficult place in life, there is a tendency to want to be somewhere else. And after all, who likes pain? I don't like pain. I don't enjoy pain and suffering at all. Who likes to be sick? Who likes to be ill? I don't. It's not pleasant. Who likes to have financial hardships? Not me. I don't like that either. Who likes to struggle? Not me. We must learn that if God sends us to Cherith, He knows what He is doing, and it's the only place for us to be, and it is where God sends us because He is there. He's there too. When we find ourselves placed in a very difficult situation, a difficult moment where it's hard to handle, the best thing we can do during these moments is trust and submit to His will. Because He's the one that's in control, not us. I really think we forget who is in control at times. I just want to remind you that as the Lord sent you to Cherith, if He has, I'm sure He has. Because I don't know anybody that's ever faced a difficult moment, not ever faced a difficult moment. When you're placed in Cherith, and He sent you there, it is merely part of His plan for your life. There's nothing that takes place in our life by chance. Nothing. We see in Romans 8:28, we're told this, And we know that all things work together for the good of those who love God, those who are called according to His purpose. I really think we forget who is in control. And I just want to remind you that the Lord has sent you to charity that is merely part of His plan for your life. Therefore, you have only two choices. You have two choices when you're in charity. Okay? The first is rebellion. I can refuse to go, and I can try to fight God all I want. You can rebel against Him if you want to. You can say, you know, I'm not staying here any longer. Or you can be like Elijah and you can be submit to God and His will. He will work out His plan in your life when you trust in Him. Or in other words, you can choose to be miserable, or you can go through the difficulties of your life and choose to rejoice in spite of the situation. We see in 1 Thessalonians 5:16 through 18, it says this, rejoice always. The Apostle Paul is talking about. Pray without ceasing. In everything, give thanks. For this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. Philippians 4:6 through 7, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, make your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. There's a place for you, and it has been ordained by God. There's a place that is nothing better for you to do in this life than to willingly follow and submit and trust and yield to God's will in your life. That's the only place you can be. And when you do that, He will help you. He won't leave you alone. He's not going to abandon you to do it all on your own. It may be a hard place. It may be a place that hurts. It may be a place that frightens and casts fears upon you. However, if the Lord ordained a place for you, then you can do nothing better than to submit to His will. So number one, it's a place God ordained. Number two, it's the promise God offered. It's the promise God offered. Okay? 1 Kings 17:4 through 6 tells us this. And it will be that you shall drink from the brook. I have commanded the ravens to feed you there. So he went and did according to the word of the Lord. He went and stayed by the brook of Cherith, which flows into the Jordan. The ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. It is here in the context of the passage that we can find that Elijah has been sent to the middle of nowhere to hide. He's right in the middle of nowhere. It's been made clear that God sent Elijah for two primary reasons. One is protection. The other is training. God assures Elijah that he promises to provide for his needs while he was there. He's not going to just toss him out to the wolves or toss him out on his own. No. He's going to provide for him while he's there. He's not going to abandon him. He's going to give him everything he needs and the assurance that he's not alone and that he is with him. He's there with him to help him. God doesn't leave Elijah. He doesn't leave us. He provides and He helps us. The lesson in these verses here is God's call is always accompanied by God's provisions. It's always accompanied by His provisions. He will always provide. He will give us what we need. He will never send you to a place that He does not give you all you need to make it through the place. His place is always complete with His provisions being there. And for Elijah, this is exactly what God was going to do and what God did for Elijah. Notice that before the need arose, God had already put the provisions in place. He had already put the provisions in place. How? When He formed the world, He made sure that this little brook was there for Elijah. He made sure that it was there for Elijah before He even formed the world, before Elijah even came onto the scene. He already provided a place for Elijah to go. Before He even told the prophet to go to Cherith, God had already commanded the ravens to take care of His man. He was going to take care of him. He was going to provide for him. This lets us know that nothing at all ever catches God by surprise. Nothing ever catches Him by surprise. He's never caught off guard. When this came up, God did not just say, hey, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. God didn't just throw His hands in the air. Oh, He already had it worked out. He didn't run around yelling, "Oh no, I don't know what I'm going to do." And it will do us a great service to know that when we're in our moments of Cherith, we're in this lowly and desolate place, that it always comes with God's provision. He'll provide. We serve a God who's already alive tomorrow. He's already there. He already knows what's going to take place. He's already there laying out your steps to take today that will prepare you for tomorrow. He's already there. He already knows. Before the dawn ever breaks tomorrow, the Lord is already there. He's already placed what we need in our paths. He's already ordained the path that we will take. Regardless of the circumstance or difficulty, God has already prepared the path that I will take. We see in Psalm 37:23, the steps of the good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delights in his way. This is the truth that Paul encountered during his fiery trial. And he talked about the thorn in the flesh in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7. He said Paul was told by the Lord already that he supplied what he had need of before he rose. And maybe it just be me, or I've wondered this at times, especially when I was preparing this lesson. Have you ever wondered where the ravens got the food? We know what kind of bird a raven is. It's a scavenger. It picks off dead carcasses. Have you ever wondered where he got the food? I wondered this. I don't think he just found something rotten. The ravens just found something rotting. No. I wondered where he got the food. Perhaps you wonder if it was maybe off of Ahab's table. Maybe from Jezebel's table. I wonder sometimes. I think a little more into stuff than I ought to. But I wonder, where did they get the food from? But God already had it planned out. God provided. God already planned and had it already ordained. You know, God suspended the laws of nature for Elijah. He suspended them right there for Elijah. Why? Because God had to meet the need of his child. He hung it all out there. Never forget that God knows what you need. He's aware of it. He's going to take care of it. If he is to move the heavens and the earth to see that your need is met, to get it to where you are, he will do so. He knows where the provisions you need are. He knows what path you need to take and direct your steps, and he can meet your need. Philippians 4:19 says, "And my God shall supply all your need according to the riches of his glory in Christ." It is found in verse 5 that this involved an abundance of peace. Note the phrase that he sent according to the word of the Lord. When God called Elijah, Elijah stepped out in faith and he immediately obeyed. He stepped out in faith and obeyed. That is the secret to surviving your Cherith experiences. Coming to the place where we do not question God, question his will, question why we're having to go through things, but when he speaks, we respond. We obey according to his will. Do what we're told to do. And you see, when we're on God's payroll, he will pay our way. He will ensure that you're provided for. However, when you choose to walk in the path not ordained by him, you will pay your own way. And we can find this account in the life of Jonah. How Jonah was told to go to Nineveh. What did he do? Did he go to Nineveh? Nope. Tried to go his own way. So what did he do? He had to pay his own way. Then eventually he went to Nineveh. This is the primary lesson of Cherith. God's servants must come to the place where they obey and trust God. They must come to trust him absolutely. And Elijah had all that was provided for him. It was given to him. He had all the promise of God. God gave him what was sufficient and let him know that everything will be okay. Everything's going to be okay. So number one, it's a place God ordained. Number two, it was the promise God offered. Number three is the plan God ordered. It's the plan that God ordered. God had a plan set in motion. He knew what was going to take place. So we see in verses 5 through 6 of 1 Kings 17, said this, So he went and did according to the word of the Lord. So he went and stayed by the brook of Cherith, which flows into the Jordan. The ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and the bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. This plan in and of itself was nothing less than God's sovereign plan and his sovereign will. Notice that God is in absolute control of every situation Elijah was in. He was in total control of it all. His hand was right there in the middle of it, working out everything the way it needed to be worked out. The ravens did as he commanded, and they brought him bread and flesh to the prophet twice a day to eat. The brook continued to provide the liquid of refreshment. All of this was ordered by the Lord to teach the prophet that God was in absolute control. He was in total control of it all when it happened. And when the Lord puts you in a place where you can do nothing but trust him, he has done you the greatest favor of all, because you can trust in him. He can extend provisions for you. He already has. He's given you the provision of salvation. When we come to the place where we begin trusting in him and in him alone, we've reached the level of growth of maturity in him. That's what Elijah's doing. He's growing in maturity in him. And his plan was satisfying. God's plan, that is. Satisfying because God enjoyed the fulfillment of the Lord's promises to him. He received what the Lord told him to do. He did what God told him to do. He found God to be true. And then, nothing means as much to a suffering saint as the peace of knowing that God is in total control. And it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. We may not like the situation we find ourselves in, but if we know that God's going to take care of us, we can be satisfied anywhere with anything that comes our way. Notice that verse 5 tells us he went and he dwelt by the brook. The word dwelt means to live. He didn't just go to hang out there and pitch his tent. No. He went there to live. Elijah wasn't headed there for an overnight camping trip. He went there to build a house. He intended to live in that place until the Lord told him to go somewhere else. He didn't know how long he was going to be there. But he was trusting in God. When we begin to enjoy real victory in our lives, we find that we are placing our trust in God in the middle of any circumstance we face. When we arrive to a place where we submit to the Lord's will, no matter what the situation is that we're going through, we might think that we're on a path of helping the path of destruction. You know, when we refuse to submit to God, as opposed to submitting to him, we might find that we're on a path of destruction. But when we submit to God, we see, hey, I'm on a path that leads to life. The Apostle Paul gives us an account in Philippians 4:11-13. He says this, not that I speak in regard to need, for I have learned, whatever state I'm in, to be content. I know what it's like to be abased, and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I've learned both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. The whole purpose of God's plan was to help Elijah to get to a place where he could trust in God one day at a time. One day at a time. Now I would imagine there was some fear in Elijah. You imagine he was human. He was just like us. I'm sure he had some fear. He had some fear in the heart, possibly that evening. Would the ravens appear? Would they show up with my food? Would they bring me the bread and the flesh I need? However, as the days passed, God provided for himself and proved himself to be faithful and trustworthy. And Elijah learned to walk by faith, is what he learned. Friends, that is where the Lord wants to bring us. The Bible tells us the just shall live by faith, Romans 1:17. God wants us to come to a place where we know with each step we take that he is able to provide when we totally rely upon him. He wants us to rest in his arms by faith without fear. He will put us in a place of charity to bring this to pass. He will cut us off and to teach us to trust him fully. So number 1 is a place God ordained. Number 2 is a place God offered. Number 3 is a plan God ordered. Number 4 is the problem God orchestrated. It's the problem God orchestrated. Now the word orchestrate means He was in control. God was in control. Okay? Nothing got by Him and nothing was a surprise to Him. He was in total control of everything that was taking place. 1Kings 17:7, and it happened after a while, the brook dried up because there had been no rain on the land. It was here at this time the stream began to slowly dwindling down and to stop providing its life-giving water. It had began to run dry. Now, could you imagine how Elijah must have felt when he seen this? You know, he had to wonder, each day the stream was getting a little smaller and smaller and smaller. He was getting less water. It was getting more narrow. Then one day it was all gone. Nothing but dry and cracked stream bed. This happens to us as well. That job we have invested our lives in dries up. The mate that we have given ourselves to completely possibly walks out on us. Our health that has always been so good and robust begins to dwindle and fade away. Regardless of the circumstances, the brook has dried up. When we are faced with these kinds of trials and tribulations, we must never lose sight of two great truths. The first, the God who provides the water can also withhold the water. He is in control of our lives. As Elijah was about to find out, God had another provision and another place already planned out for him in the days to come. So it is with us. When our brook dries up, God has another channel of blessing lined up for us when we place our trust in Him and we're obedient to His will. He has a plan and a place lined up for us. And secondly, the brook is not always a sign of God's displeasure when the brook runs dry. It's not. Certainly God uses events of our lives to chasten us when we walk outside of His will. However, there are times that He will let your brook dry up in the midst of serving Him. It happened to Abraham when he was called up to offer Isaac. It happened to Joseph as he ministered in Potiphar's house. It happened to Paul as he served faithfully and served God in Lystra. It happened to Jesus as he agonized in Gethsemane and He gave up His life to be the ransom for our sin on Calvary. Sometimes the brook of life dries up because God's pleased with us, and He desires to take us into better things, to give us better things. He knows and He will give us what we need. He knows at times we'll be reluctant to leave a place when everything is going perfect. After all, if the brook hadn't went dry, do you think Elijah would have got up and left? Do you think he would have got up and just walked off if the brook hadn't dried up? No, he'd have stayed right there. Sometimes God lets our brook dry up so we will move. We will leave and go where He is leading us. Sometimes God allows the brook to dry up because we are guilty of trusting the brook more than we're trusting Him. We need to learn to look at the Lord not only for His gifts, but even when His gifts are gone, and to trust and obey by faith. I can imagine how Elijah must have felt when the brook dried up before his very eyes. I wonder if he felt abandoned. I wonder if he felt forsaken. I wonder all these things. I'm sure he did. I wonder if he felt that God had somehow let him down. Have you ever felt abandoned by the Lord when the brook dries up? I have. But then I can see, hey, I understand why now. Looking back, I was on a path of sin where He didn't want me. The brook dried up. He done it to move me on to better and greener pastures. I just want you to know that God has not forsaken you. He will not leave you in a place where He will not provide. And in fact, when you're standing there and you're looking at the dried up brook, the cracked ground before your very eyes, are you more concerned over the brook being dried up? Or are you focusing, hey, where do you want me to go, God? Friend, He cannot leave you. He won't forsake you. You can walk away from Him. He gives us a promise in Isaiah 49, 14 through 16. It says this, but Zion said, the Lord has forsaken me, and my Lord has forgotten me. Can a woman forget her nursing child, and have not compassion on the son in her womb? Surely they may forget, yet I will not forget you. See, I have inscribed you on the palms of my hands. Your walls are continually before me. As we look this morning, remember that God is sending Elijah to school for training. He is training a prophet. He is building a man of God. And God knows that before Elijah can stand in the power on Mount Carmel, he must first become broken at Cherith. However, one thing that does us good to keep in mind is that God never left Elijah. He never abandoned Elijah. He was there with Elijah through it all. His goal is the same for us today. Many of us have attended the same university that Elijah attended. We are alumni of the Brook University, if you will. Others are just enrolling. Brooks are beginning to dry up in your life. You wonder what to do, how to make it. How are you going to make the bills? How are you going to make the house payment? How are you going to make the car payment? Your brook's drying up. How are you going to do it? My advice to you today is that you come to a place early where you roll everything up, you roll it all in one big pile, and you place it before the Lord, just as Hannah did in her Sunday school lesson. You give it to God, leave it there with Him, trust Him and know that He will and He can take care of you. He will provide. If you're a child of God, it may help you to come to the place where you realize that everything that happened in your life is part of God's plan. And there is nothing that can happen to you that He does not allow or He is not aware of. Take into account Job. Job was a righteous man. God allowed him to go through certain things, but God never left him. God was in control of everything. Take into account Christ. God directed every blow from the taskmaster as He'd been whipped. Not one bone in His body was broken, because it fulfilled prophecy. He directed every blow. God was with him. God was with you. He'll be with you. Now I want to ask you something. When your brook dries up, where are you turning? Are you giving it to God? If there is a need this morning, I want you to know that you can bring it before the Lord. If salvation is what you need, then come. All things are ready. If you're standing here looking at the brook drying up in front of you, I want you to come. If you need the Lord to move in your life, I want you to come. Whatever you need, God can and will make a way. He will provide when you come and lay it before His feet. You know, Elijah's brook dried up. God provided. Elijah submitted. Elijah was obedient. Now, if you're not a Christian, here's what you have to do. You have to know that God is there. He is there for you. You have to hear the gospel. He was here long before the foundations of the earth. He came to save you from a life of sin, to give you the hope of heaven. He bore your sins and iniquity on the cross of shame, rising, conquering sin, death, and grave on the third day. You have to know that your Savior loves you. He came to bear it all for you. You have to be willing to believe. You have to believe that that is true. You have to have faith. Just as Elijah had faith that God was going to provide for him. You have to believe. You have to hear. You have to hear, believe, repent, and then you have to be baptized. Coming forth, repenting of your sins, make the great confession of your faith. Hey, I believe Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. We washed or immersed in water grave of baptism. Your sins are removed as far as the east is from the west. They're gone. You go down with the old man of sin, raised a new creature in Christ, where you receive the gift of the Holy Spirit, and to remain faithful unto death. And He will give you a crown of life. If you're not a Christian, all things are ready waiting on you. Don't look at the brook, the dried brook, before you say, you know what, it's useless. Place your trust in God. He'll be there with you. He'll provide for you. If you're not a Christian, why don't come as we stand and sing our invitation?